Welcome to week 8 of the Fantasy Head Coach Free Tendies Fantasy show, podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm Ted. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
What's up, dude?
We missed our front office episode on Tuesday, and it wasn't because we were too busy or anything. It was because the Niners lost and we didn't feel like it.
Yep.
Anyways, on to this show.
Okay, first game of the week is the Buccaneers at the Bills with an implied total for the Buccaneers of 17. Bills at about 25.5. For the Buccaneers, game script-wise, you're starting Evans and Godwin. Me and Ted have diverging opinions on White as a player. I think he's had a really tough schedule the first few weeks this year, and he's gotten really encouraging usage. I think the game script will favor a lot of passing, and I think the Bills' defense looks really vulnerable without their guys that are injured. But because he's had such a bad run this year, Ted really faded him in drafts, and understandably so. But contrary to popular opinion, but because he's had such a tough run this year, we'll call him a tricky decision this week. And same with Baker. The Buccaneers looked really rough last week, really rough. So I'm not sure if you're rolling out Baker with confidence at the moment. For the Bills, you're starting their big names: Cooks, Allen, Diggs. And then Kincaid. As long as Knox is out, Kincaid is a smash start. He is currently really quite high rated in the NFL in terms of a bunch of different metrics for both like receiver efficiency and catch percentage and catch rate. He just has been splitting time with Knox. Without Knox, man, this guy's going to go to town. He's an absolute smash start. Burn your waiver priority on him. I would burn, depending on what your team is like and how competitive you are, I would be pretty comfortable burning a huge chunk of fab on the guy. He's going to be that dude while Knox is out. Knox is having a surgery, and they haven't determined if he'll go on IR or not. So you don't know. It might be a 4 to 6 week run out of him. And you're starting him this week. And then Gabe Davis, tricky decision. Really cooled off. He's always been a boomer bust player, but he's been really cooled off the last few weeks. Tough defense. Hard to say if the game script is going to favor a lot of passing. So tricky decision. Some rosters you'll have to start him. I'd look for other options where you can.
My only comment on this game is I don't believe that either team will attempt to run the ball in this one. I don't see either of these teams being committed to it or having any success running the ball. So I kind of lean towards maybe Gabe Davis start, but with him you just really never know, right? And just generally speaking about the Bills, man, they are in trouble. It's officially uh-oh time for them. If they want to make the playoffs, Josh Allen has to be playing at like an MVP level, and he's going to have to be like the fantasy quarterback one, which he already is, but he's going to have to pick it up even more if this team wants to be competitive. So if you have Josh Allen on your fantasy team, I'd be pretty stoked if I were you.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Next, we have the Eagles going into Washington to play the Commanders. For the Eagles, they have an implied team total of like 25 points, and the Commanders have an implied team total of 18.5. For the Eagles, we are starting everyone. This Commanders team stinks at playing defense. Don't let 7 or 14 points allowed to the Giants or defensive mastermind Ron Rivera fool you. This defense blows. They can't stop anybody. This Eagles team has a lot of dogs, has a lot of studs. So it's like Hurts, Swift, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Goddard. That's everyone that matters. Start them all. Then for the Commanders, we're starting Terry and Logan Thomas. So we're finally starting to get a little bit of clarity in terms of like what this Commanders pecking order is for targets, and it's Terry and Logan Thomas are the two that you want. This Eagles team, they're banged up in the secondary. You can't run on them at all. So if you're gonna move the ball on this team, you have to pass it. So it'll be Terry and Logan Thomas for me. Our sits: Jahan Dotson, Sam Howell, and Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, this is more of a game flow call and what the Eagles are good at call. We're projecting the Commanders to probably be trailing in this game for the majority, if not all, of the game. And the Eagles are very good at stopping the run. So, that doesn't bode well for what the Commanders like to do with Brian Robinson. He's just like a front runner when they're ahead in games. They just want to run him. Sam Howell, I think he's been sacked like over 50 times in 7 games so far this year, which is like far and away like record-breaking pace. Like if he keeps getting sacked at the rate he is, like he's going to end up in a hospital gurney by the end of the year, and Jalen Carter is going to just be blowing up plays, I'd imagine. So no thank you on him. And then Jahan Dotson. This one hurts my soul. It makes my soul weary to say it, but he's a sit until further notice. There was actually a clip on Twitter last week that was going around of Jahan Dotson catching snaps to like hold for like the kicker. So that's like how they're deciding he should spend his time. So no thank you. He's cuttable. He's cuttable for redraft teams. For 10, 12 team leagues, get rid of him. You don't need him. Tricky decision, Curtis Samuel. We mentioned it earlier. This Eagles team, you're going to have to throw on him to beat him, and Curtis Samuel is the short, quick route guy. So he's worth a shout. And then Antonio Gibson, DFS tricky decision. Probably not a redraft guy you're rolling out there, but if you're playing DraftKings or something, maybe take a look at him. Since we're projecting this is a game the Commanders are down pretty big in, they would probably be dumping off to their running back, and Gibson is like the new J.D. McKissick for this team. So he could be more useful than normal, I would say. You got anything on this game, Yanni?
Nope, you got it. Okay, Saints versus the Colts. Saints with an implied total of 21. Colts coming back at 22.5. The Colts have looked really good lately, man. I mean, a little up and down, but more good than bad for sure. And the Saints actually had a pretty good game last week too. Or okay game last week. You are starting Kamara, Olave, Michael Thomas, Carr. Because of game script, because of the team, the Colts can be passed on. Those are all great starts. Kamara, congratulations. If you were smart and you took him in that 5-6 turn, mid-6 round, you're certainly getting your money's worth this year. We're going to have Taysom Hill as a sit. Every year this happens. Every single year. He looks like he's poking his head out as kind of the starting running back, the starting quarterback, the this, the that. You'll run and get him on waivers. And he will can produce in very spotty spurts here and there, and he'll drop off the face of the earth. That's kind of what he does. So we're sitting him this week. And also, if you're starting him in places where he's tight end eligible, knowing that he's like a quarterback, you're the worst kind of person. I really can't stand that.
True losers. Okay. True losers. Guys who start Taysom Hill in the tight end spot. Assholes.
Dude, I have two tight end needy leagues that I'm top. I'm in the playoffs as of now in those leagues in both of them, and I would not go pick up Taysom Hill and do it. I don't believe in that. I don't think that's how fantasy should be played. I don't know why Yahoo does it the way they do. Okay, for the Colts, though, you are starting Pittman and JT, man. Congratulations, JT owners. We're finally seeing life out of him. We're finally seeing that guy that went first overall just 2 years ago. He looked excellent, man. He's looked like their best player. They're not their best player, but he's looking like the explosive, high-end asset that he is. We finally saw Zach Moss drop off last week. Just generally speaking, he's probably going to be on our start list quite a bit going forward. He's looked really good. And on that note, you are sitting Zach Moss. He has now been relegated to his backup role. I think he got 6.5 half PPR points last week. So, if you want to do a super cheap dart throw in DFS, he's certainly not the worst one. But generally speaking, especially in redraft, you're going to be sitting him. And then your tricky decisions. Gardner Minshew went wild last week. I played one team. He beat me. He is the reason I lost a game last week because of those 2 rushing touchdowns. And I love that guy, man. He's awesome. He's an awesome story. So I'm happy to see him balling. He's only a tricky decision not a start because the Saints have had such a stout defense this year. If he goes wild against the Saints, man, it's might have yourself a really nice fantasy asset moving forward. And then Josh Downs. Josh Downs has put together a few really nice weeks this year. A little bit inconsistent as you expect with a rookie receiver, but again, a lot more good than bad. So he's a tricky decision this week because it does seem like Gardner prefers Pittman, but Pittman also had a pretty low target rate last week. Downs did pretty well. So it's something to keep an eye on, but for now, he's a tricky decision.
Yeah. My only comment on this game is I think Josh Downs is like what people thought Alec Pierce was going to be coming into the season, but like he's better, Alec Pierce. Better at football.
You saw Alec Pierce. I don't know if you saw him. He was cropping up on those deep sleeper lists all offseason. And it turns out they were right idea, wrong guy.
Yeah. All right. Next we got the Jaguars going into Acrisure Field. I'm not sure. It used to be the field formerly known as Heinz Field to play the Steelers. The Jaguars have an implied team total of 22. The Steelers have an implied team total of 19.5 points. For the Jaguars, we are starting the Prince that was promised, Travis Etienne, Evan Ingram, and Christian Kirk, oddly enough. And our STD is Calvin Ridley. So here's the deal. I think that Trevor Lawrence, ETN, and Ingram are pretty self-explanatory. We don't really need to talk about that. But we do need to talk about Kirk and Ridley. Since week one, Christian Kirk has paced this Jaguars team in targets, yards, every stat that matters for a pass catcher. Christian Kirk has paced this team. And Calvin Ridley has not had more than like 5 catches in a game. I think he had one game with like 80 yards where he showed a little bit of life, but other than that, like I think he goosed last week. He's goosed another time before in London. He got saved by a touchdown. It's getting to the point whether or not the Jaguars, whatever the Jaguars depth chart says, I don't care anymore. Start Christian Kirk and feel a little weird about Calvin Ridley. Will it turn around? I think it probably will. I would be shocked if we have them ranked like this for the rest of the season, but for now, we feel better about starting Christian Kirk than Calvin Ridley. Then for the Steelers, we're starting Deontay Johnson. That's a Yanni pick. Deontay was, I drafted him last year and I hate him. He hasn't scored a touchdown since 2021, but man's been getting targets. If you like anything about this Steelers team, it's probably the guy you would like. We're sitting Najee and Jalen Warren. No thank you. This Jaguars run defense is good, and the Steelers aren't very good at running the ball. And tricky decision is Pickens. The Jaguars have a corner. I don't know his name, but he's been locking down number one wide receivers. So that's kind of why we have him as a tricky decision, and we're having Deontay as a full-blown start. You got anything on this one, Yanni?
No. Yeah, look, we were talking about it before we recorded. Deontay more or less cost Ted a championship last year, and I do understand being burnt by players like that. In 3 quarters of use, he's seen 12 targets. He's gotten 8 catches, I want to say, for about 180 yards, something like that, or maybe 140 yards, somewhere around there. I think he's had about 18 points in 3 halves of football. So with a good game script and with him being able to work into the slot a lot more, I like Deontay Johnson this week. I do, but it is a point of contention between the two of us. But no, that's it.
Yep. I would just like to caution fantasy managers, if you have Deontay Johnson, I wouldn't feel super comfortable about the number 2 wide receiver on a team that has Kenny Pickett as the quarterback and Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator. But I think the guy's talented. That's for sure. My problems with him are not as a player.
Probably a good one for the Chiefs to make a call about. Okay. Texans at Panthers. Texans with an implied point total of about 23 points. Panthers with an implied total of 20. For the Texans, you're starting your studs this week, especially against a soft defensive matchup like this. C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dr. Schultz. I saw Dalton Schultz dropped in one of my leagues this year, and this is a $100 buy-in, $1,200 pot league. That is outrageous. He should not be on the waiver wire in any league. I noticed there's a lot of rosters with him stacked. Like, people grabbed him as an insurance tight end. If you can get him off rosters, go get him. The man has had an excellent month. He's someone I am absolutely looking to get in my lineup whenever I can, and especially against the Panthers. And then your tricky decision is Pierce. Really disappointing draft pick this year. This guy went as high as pick 30 and again, in $100 buy-in leagues, I was seeing him as high as pick 30 last year. And it's he's really been inconsistent. He's really been disappointing. We kind of understood he needed the volume, but coming into the season from last year, when he had gotten the volume, he was like a low-end RB1. Devin Singletary seems to have upset the mix. Maybe the coaching staff isn't as high on him as the previous coaching staff was. Whatever it is, it's wild to have him as a tricky decision against a defense like this, but for now he is. You're starting Thielen for the Panthers. Believe the Texans' number 1 corner is still on IR. And Thielen's been an elite fantasy asset to this point in the season. Probably will have a negative game script all week. We'll probably be passing a lot. You're sitting basically everyone else, Bryce Young. And then your tricky decision for the Panthers, and this is worth discussing for a moment. Hubbard came in with Sanders being injured, and he actually looked much more efficient, much more productive than Sanders. He was getting a high-end workload, too. I believe he got 23 carries and targets last week and did a lot with them. And so now you're looking at a situation where they target the running backs at a very high. Hypothetically, if one of them were the featured guy, he should be doing well. And Sanders really couldn't produce for whatever reason. I was really kind of surprised because he was actually a historically efficient runner on a yards per carry basis going into the season. That's kind of why I was interested in him in that running back dead zone. And surprisingly enough, you just have not seen that with him this year. And then Frank Wright comes out this week and says, we're going to approach it with a mixed approach. We're going to approach it potentially with, a hot hand, whatever that is. To me, that was all code for we're going to give Chuba some run. And if Chuba looks much better than Sanders, and they were much more competitive in the games with Chuba at running back over Sanders, and their running back or their quarterback's a rookie who needs a safety blanket. To me, the ingredients are all there for Chuba to take this job if he wants to. So they're both tricky decisions for now. I think one of them will probably have a good game this week. We just don't know what the coaching staff is thinking. You don't know how that split's going to come out. So for now, they're both tricky decisions. But keep an eye on that. And if Chuba's on waiver wires, I would go grab him.
Yeah. I guess couple things. I have a couple things on this one. The Texans, man, all other guys are just getting carried by C.J. Stroud being a stud. Schultz, Collins, Tank. Like, you got to be so excited if you're a Texans fan, and be excited if you have any of those guys on your team. Thing number two, I think with the Miles Sanders deal, like, whether or not it's his fault or not, like, yeah, I would be fading him at this point. I definitely, you're panicking if you have him on your roster. I don't think it's a problem with the player. I think the organization let him down by being so bad, then him getting injured at a bad time, and now they're just going to back off of him. No, thank you. And then the last one, it makes me sick to my stomach that guys like Adam Thielen and Raheem Mostert, like 30-year-old fossils who should not be doing anything in this league, are like widely considered to be league winners right now. Let's fix this fantasy football. Let's have our studs start heating up a little bit. So, like, guys who took the last 5 years off of fantasy, forgot who all the players are, and drafted these old fossils, like, stop winning leagues. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, this is the year of dumb fucking luck. If you were to describe what this season is, this is the year of holy shit, I can't believe that guy's balling. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You go ahead, buddy. Take the next one.
Gotta have faith it'll come around. All right, so next we got the Rams going into Jerry World to play the Cowboys. The Rams have an implied team total of 19.25 points. The Cowboys have an implied team total of 25.75 points. Our starts for the Rams are the ballers, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. That's kind of hard to say. It sounds silly, but yeah, no, they're absolute studs. Like, would you put them in like the top 5 wide receiver duos of like the entire NFL?
Fantasy wise, or
like just as guys?
They're right there. If they're not, I'd have to really think. I mean, clearly you'd have the Bengals, the Eagles, the Niners, the Dolphins are all clearly above them. You'd have to really think about it from there. But
I think they're right in the mix. They're right in the mix. They're just such studs.
Yeah, they're either 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, think about that. We were talking about this before the show. Puka maintained a first read target share last week of 37%. His first read target share without Cooper Kupp was 36.5%. In other words, Cooper Kupp coming back had no impact on the degree to which the Rams want to feature Puka. Now, that's probably in part because of his injury and because of his usage, but they immediately drafted a dude who they have 1A, 1B with Cooper Kupp. And we know what Cooper Kupp, I mean, it's really incredible. Their wide receiver drafting department is fantastic. Whoever handles their wide receiver scouting is arguably one of the best in the NFL. To find mid-round, like, small school guys like that is absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. All right, our sits for this week are Darrell Henderson, Royce Freeman, and Tyler Higbee. Henderson and Freeman, this is more of a product of it being a timeshare of 2 not very good running backs, and the Rams just, I don't see them trying to run the ball in this one. They've kind of been living and dying with Stafford throwing 50 times a game. So, I mean, you'd have to be flipping a coin to see who gets the usage here. We say don't bother, just leave him on your bench. And Higbee's cooled down these last couple weeks. Now that Cooper Kupp is back, it's just there's too many mouths to feed to waste time throwing the ball to Tyler Higbee. And the Rams see that. Fantasy managers see it too. Leave him on your bench. Tricky decision, Matt Stafford. I feel like the perception of this Cowboys defense and what they really are is kind of changed now. We're 8 weeks into this, and I think the Cowboys are not as scary of a defense in terms of like fantasy matchups for your guys, but also like I don't know, they still got Gilmore, they still got Bland, that fella named Bland. I don't remember his first name. But yeah, I mean, tricky decision. He doesn't give you the rushing upside, but he's going to drop back like 50 times a game, and he has 2 great wide receivers, so maybe worth it, depending on what your roster looks like. For the Cowboys, we're starting Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott. If you're a Tony Pollard owner, just relax. Just relax. Like, it's been a tough year for most running backs in the league, not named Christian McCaffrey or Raheem Mostert, and even Raheem Mostert is at down weeks. Like, just right. What was that?
Or Kyron Williams.
Oh yeah, Kyron Williams too. It's so obnoxious. Yeah, like just if you're Tony Pollard manager, just be patient. Be patient. It's coming. The usage is there. The usage is elite. It just hasn't really been his game yet, but it will be. Do not trade him. Don't do it. I think he's like a top 3 like most valuable fantasy running back to have on your team. CeeDee Lamb, there's talks about is he like an elite guy? Doesn't matter. He produces like an elite fantasy asset. We start him. And then Dak. This Rams team has been attackable. I don't think their defense is great. The team as a whole has played, I think, above expectations, but their defense hasn't been outstanding. We think this is a good spot for him. We're sitting the other wide receivers. We just felt like mentioning this in case you were feeling really frisky and like thinking about a Brandon Cooks or Michael Gallup rolling them out there. Don't do that. Don't do it. And then a tricky decision is Jake Ferguson. Was very involved early in the season. The last couple weeks haven't been great for him, but tight end is still a pretty dry position. So, I mean, we'll call him tricky decision. We'll see. I think he turns it around. If I had to guess, I think this is closer to a start for me than a sit, but just worth noting based on the recent history that he could be a tricky decision for you. Do you have anything on this one, Yanni?
Nope. All right, Barn Burner. The Jets, 19.75 implied total, coming back at the Giants, 16.75 at home. For the Jets, really, their only consistent startable fantasy assets, Breece Hall. You're sitting pretty much everyone else, except for your one tricky decision, which is Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's had some double-digit games mixed in with some single-digit games. This is probably closer to a start for me than a sit. Because it's the Giants and because he is still a super talented receiver. And Zach Wilson's actually looked a lot better the last few weeks. But he's far from calling it a smash start. This feels like a Breece Hall game to me. I would say Breece will be one of the top running backs this week. For the Giants, you're starting your Saquons. Waller finally got involved last week, finally got a touchdown. I don't know why they're not using him way more. Their wide receivers are all average at best. He should be getting a lot more play. But in any case, he's a start this week, and you're sitting everyone else for the Giants.
That it? That all you have on this one? That was quick.
Nothing interesting to say about it.
I think I have one note on this one, and it's Darren Waller. I think that maybe that has to do with who the quarterback is. If I'm the New York Giants, I probably want to ride out Tyrod Taylor, honestly. He's looked great. Tyrod's been making throws and making plays and, able to, like, set up protections at the line, which Danny Dimes obviously couldn't do. Like, 2 weeks starting Tyrod, this team looks night and day better. I think Dayball is probably thinking about it. And I think the whole Giants organization is probably realizing how screwed they are paying Danny Dimes that contract. But, yeah, that's it. All right, we got another close good matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. The Dolphins have an implied team total of 28.25 points, and the Patriots have an implied team total of about 19 points. We're starting Tua, Tyreek Hill, and Waddle for the Dolphins. We're sitting Jeff Wilson for now. He will be back this week. We want to see the involvement. And our STD for the week is Raheem Mostert. Fuck this guy. He is old. He is not that good. Jeff Wilson is back. Like, we put him as a tricky decision because we don't really know what the split is going to be. But his days as like a smash league winner are numbered. If you held on to him or you bought him in a trade, you're dumb and it's too late and you should have gotten rid of him and traded him for what you could have gotten. For the Patriots, our only start of the week is Ramondre. He actually did pretty good last week against the Bills. I mean, it wasn't like a league-winning week. He didn't have like a massive blow-up game, but it was the most encouraging usage I've seen and the most encouraging like he's looked all year. In this Dolphins team, their defense isn't great and they could be run on. So start him. We're sitting Hunter Henry and Mac Jones. Usually we just say like sit all of them, but these two in particular, I felt like we should like highlight specifically Hunter Henry because he's now splitting snaps with Mike Gesicki. Hunter Henry is in a tight end timeshare on one of the worst offenses in the league, so he is a drop if he's on your team. And then Mac Jones, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by last week's performance. He is still a bad quarterback. He will not do it again. Don't do it. Don't look at the numbers from last week and think that something has changed. Nothing has changed about this team. And then tricky decision, Kendrick Bourne. I believe Yanni had a good stat that we went over in like pre-recording or whatever, or like the pre-show, that Kendrick Bourne has gotten in double digits as a fantasy option in half points, half PPR if he gets at least 7 targets, which he has done sometimes. So we'll see if the Patriots like want to keep giving him work, because I mean, to me, he's much better than Juju or Devontae Parker or guys like that. So I'd keep giving him a run. You got anything on this one, Yanni? Do you think my classification of Raheem Mostert as an STD is being unfair and unreasonable?
No, I mean, it's a good defense, man. I think we do have to see. I mean, I think he's trending downward, right? Because A-Chain will be back and Jeff Wilson's back this week and Salvin Ahmed. We saw him when Mostert was ineffective last week. They started working on Ahmed. It's interesting. It's just noting a trend. It's noteworthy. I think most people are going to start him until the wheels fall off, you know. But
Raheem Mostert has hurt me deeply.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Falcons versus God, getting hurt on multiple Niners playoff runs. Healthy as a bird when he goes to Miami. Falcons at Titans. Falcons with an implied team total of 19.5. Titans with an implied team total of 17. It's probably going to be a pretty brutal in the trenches game. I don't want to say a gross game or a bad game, except for the fact that the Titans quarterback is bad. I think it'll actually be like an old school, pretty hard hitting football game. For the Falcons, you're starting Ritter, Bijan, London, Pitts. Bijan, notwithstanding weird illness aside, that was just something weird I'm inclined to throw out the week, although you are very disappointed if you took him in that like 4 to 7 pick range where he was going in most drafts. You're sitting Algier in a tricky decisions, Jonnu Smith, the Jonnu Smith revenge game. Jonnu Smith's actually been more productive than Pitts in stretches this year, but Pitts kind of looks like he's taken over as the preferred asset there. So for now, we're calling Pitts a start, Jonnu Smith tricky. For the Titans, pretty much the story of the Titans' career since Derrick Henry got there, I guess except for when A.J. Brown was there, but he's gone now. The story of their last few years. You're starting Derrick Henry, you're sitting everyone else. Backup, it looks like a backup quarterback this week. They're not sure, but the coach has been talking about it in post-game or pre-game midweek press conferences. You probably just don't want any part of Malik Willis as your starting quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely not. Malik Willis being starting quarterback for this game is worst case scenario for this Titans team. Even Henry becomes, in my opinion, like potentially a sit if it's Malik Willis, because the Falcons will put 10 in the box and say, okay, throw it, buddy, because Malik Willis cannot throw the football. And other thing I want to mention about this game, obviously Desmond Ridder has had 6 turnovers the last 2 weeks and 4 fumbles inside of the red zone, which is not ideal at all. People have been calling for his job. People are wanting to see Taylor Heineke. You know, the noise is getting pretty loud, but Arthur Smith does not care. Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder are winning games, and Desmond Ridder, I think, is improving as a passer. Like, say what you want about the turnover, like the terribly timed turnovers, poor game management. All of those things are true. Yes, I agree. Do I think Desmond Ridder is a starting quarterback in this league? Probably not. But he's starting to throw enough, and I think he's improving enough as a passer to the point where we can start seeing these Falcons guys who we've been just waiting on, just begging Arthur Smith, please dial up these guys more, please get them more involved. I think we're finally starting to see it with Ridder, which is good. I think that's funny. What was it? After the game last week against the Bucs, somebody asked Arthur Smith, they go, what was it? Like, yeah, you know, Desmond Ridder's had 3 more fumbles in the red zone this week. He fumbled one even out of the end zone for a touchback. And the reporter goes, like, are we getting close to a point here where like his job isn't safe anymore? And Arthur Smith goes, you know what? He wins a lot of games for us. So until this Falcons team starts losing, which I don't think they will, because I think they're good enough at other places, you're going to be seeing these guys a lot more, and I think we'll continue to see weird Algier involvement and all that stuff. So sorry, fantasy managers. You should have known what you bought with this Falcons team. Next, we got the Vikings going into Green Bay to play the Packers. The Vikings have an implied team total of 22 points, and the Packers have an implied team total of 20.5 points. Our starts this week are the new Dan Marino, Kirk Cousins, Jordan Addison, the new Randy Moss, and TJ Hawkinson, the new Rob Gronkowski. These three just carved up the 49ers last night. It was sad. I want to pick them based on picking the Vikings. I didn't actually think they'd win, but it's just the way the math worked out. So I profited off of it, but I feel dirty and bad for doing that. And it was depressing to see my Niners look that way. Tricky decisions for the Vikings. We have Alexander Mattison and Cam Akers. This Vikings backfield is starting to look more and more gross and more unsure of what is going on. But this Packers team has struggled to stop the run all year. So I think they're both worth tricky decisions. I don't know who's going to get the majority of the run. I lean Madison, but it wouldn't shock me if Akers just randomly got all the work here. And then KJ Osborne is a DFS play. He's not the best starting wide receiver in the world, but if Jair Alexander is on Jordan Addison, he might be the most open guy that Kirk looks to if it's not Hawkinson. So we just threw him there as a potentially cheap DFS option. For the Packers, we are starting nobody, and our only tricky decision is Aaron Jones. Me and Yanni argued about this quite a bit before recording. I'm willing to call Aaron Jones a sit too, and quite frankly, like one of the biggest busts of this year in the draft. This Packers team looks absolutely dead in the water. Their offensive genius of a play caller looks lost. Their quarterback looks terrible. He cannot throw the ball past 10 yards, and everyone on this Packers team disgusts me. I don't think they do anything well, and I think that they're a bottom 3 team in the league. Sorry, Adrian. I'm just calling it like I see it. So, yeah, that's all I got for this one. You got anything on this, Yanni?
No, I would be buying Aaron Jones right now. Dude's averaging 6 yards an opportunity this game. He just got injured this year. He got injured. That happens to running backs. We'll see how it plays out.
5 half PPR points last week against the Denver Broncos. 1 PPR point the last time he played a game, which he also left injured. The man is 29 years old, and I don't see this offense getting any better. But I think Aaron Jones is talented. I'm not calling him untalented. I just think that the writing's on the wall for this team. I think they're getting a real big reality check, and
it might be. We'll find it.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, right? For me, it's just hard to say right now. We need more information, but it's not looking good. You're not thrilled. Okay, Browns at the Seahawks. Browns with an 18.25 implied team total. The Seahawks with a 21.25 implied team total. Tough game for the Browns, man, going in with a backup quarterback to Seattle. Your only start for the Browns is Kareem Hunt. With Jerome Ford having the high ankle, Kareem Hunt's had 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. He's been their lead guy. He was extremely inefficient. I had Jerome Ford on all my buy lists before the high ankle sprain happened, before the game, because I thought Kareem Hunt looked extremely inefficient. And then Jerome Ford went out there and ripped off a 70-yard touchdown. I was feeling great. I have him in 3 leagues. I was all excited, and then he gets the high ankle. I would say while he's out, you are starting Kareem Hunt pretty much every week, even in PPR. He gets like receptions and stuff. He's a good play. And then you're sitting everyone else outside of Amari Cooper. Amari's so damn good. You really want to say he's a start every week, but he's playing with a backup quarterback. He's playing elite corners. He's playing in a tough environment. They're playing in a low-scoring game. It's hard to call Amari a start this week. He might go off. I mean, he had a good game against the Niners. It just feels kind of risky, and it's probably a roster-based decision. I think a lot of people will have to start him. I just don't think you can reasonably say that he's like a start, based on circumstances around him. And then your DFS play, this is a guy that I'm kind of a fan of this week. He got a lot of run after Jerome Ford went out and actually looked pretty good, and that's Pierre Strong. If you're going to attack the Seahawks, you generally want to attack him on the ground. And I think for how cheap he's going to be in DFS, he's an interesting interesting one. I don't think you really want to start him in redraft. I saw him on a lot of go pick up lists this week for redraft. I don't know. And they called it a low grade high ankle for Jerome Ford, which will normally only mean 2 games, maybe 3 at the most. They're not putting him on the IR. So I'm not sure how strong in redraft that is, but in daily fantasy, it's an interesting one. For the Seahawks, Ken Walker has been a low end to mid range to high end RB1 all year. I called it out in the beginning of the year that I felt like a huge part of people's fantasy success this year was going to be how well they evaluated these split backfields, whether it was from rookie splits or free agent additions. How well you evaluated what that workload was going to look like was going to determine a lot of these picks and how successful you were. And it looks like Kenneth Walker, at least for now, was a smash pick in that. It looks like Breece Hall, as he's coming around, was a smash pick in that. It looks like Ramondre Stevenson, not so much, right? It goes both ways. But for now, man, he's a high-end fantasy asset. In the leagues where I have him, I'm getting 50 fantasy offers away. I keep getting obscene amount of offers. I've been offered Raheem Mostert for him like 9 times. Anyway, he's a start until further notice. I just figured we'd throw these guys on here. Jake Bobo and JSN, because they've been getting play without DK. I thought some people might be tempted to start him. And actually, Jake Bobo looked great last week. But with DK back, you're not starting him. And then Geno, I think, is a sit because of the quality of this defense, because of the pass rush, because of the poor O-line that the Seahawks have. I think he's going to get pretty beat up in this one. And then your tricky decisions are DK and Lockett. It probably is a game script that's going to favor a little bit of passing. Maybe not a lot, but they are going to have to pass the ball. Because their O-line is probably going to get dominated by an elite D-line, right? Probably going to be through the air more so than on the ground. So they're both tricky decisions. DK because of health, Lockett because he might get 2 points, he might get 30. I don't know. I've never owned a Lockett share in my life in fantasy. Ever since I started playing, I don't prefer his profile as a player, but maybe you'll start him, maybe you'll get lucky. If it's zone, it's typically going to be a Lockett game. If it's man coverage, it's going to be a DK game. And DK would be a start if not for health. He's dealing with a bunch of injuries. He missed his first game ever as a pro last week. In the first season, I drafted him, by the way. So, tricky decisions.
I got a couple things on this one. Jake Bobo runs a 5-second 40-yard dash. Dude blows.
What?
He's not good. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It shocks me that he made a roster.
Dude, I 5'2" in high school.
I think that dude, I don't know. I think that Pete Carroll just is entertained by that guy. He might be a locker room glue guy. I don't know why he's on the team. Thing number 2, Geno might be the second best quarterback in this game. We'll see. And pick number 3, I'm going to have a pick on this game. Let me know in the comments if you know the pick that I'll make for the old gambling show on Saturday. I wonder if I've tipped my hand too much. All right, next we have the Bengals coming into Levi's Stadium to play the reeling 49ers. The Bengals have an applied team total of 20 points, and the 49ers have an applied team total of 25.5 points. For the Bengals, we're starting all of the important fantasy guys. What was, I would say at the beginning of the year for the first maybe month, probably was perceived as a very scary fantasy defense matchup. Now, I don't know. I think we're fine rolling out Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon. After we saw what the Vikings did last week, I don't see a reason to leave these guys on your bench. They're studs and you drafted them high. You got to roll them out there. Sit is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd tends to disappear when Chase and Higgins are in the game. I believe some teams are rolling out Boyd when Higgins was gone. Just wanted to bring him to your attention. Ride's over. Put him back on your bench. For the 49ers, we're starting CMC. We're starting Brandon Ayuk. We're starting George Kittle. And we're still starting Brock Purdy. For CMC, that's self-explanatory. Probably should have gone as the number 1 overall pick. Brandon Ayuk coming off a tough week last week, but this Bengals deep pass defense isn't great, and he's going to be, for better or worse, running as the primary guy this week for Brock and the Niners. George Kittle, because Debo's not in, he is just asked to do more to carry this offense. He had a good night last night against Minnesota. I believe he had 80 yards. That should have been his highest yardage game of the year. Again, this Bengals defense isn't great, and we're recommending him. And Brock Purdy. There's been a lot of talk about our kid. There's been a lot of talk about the kid the last 2 weeks. I believe this time 2 weeks ago, the conversation on him was a potential MVP candidate. I believe he got as low as the fourth lowest odds to win MVP on FanDuel. Everything was going right for this team. And the last 2 weeks were rough for him. The Niners were trailing in games. He didn't look good in spots where the team was down and needed a play. Against the Browns, he did lead what could have been the game-winning drive, but Jake Moody missed a kick. And last night, he had 2 opportunities at the end of the game against a not very good Vikings team. And, he threw 2 picks. Here's the deal. Brock is still on a very good offense. Brock did not just magically become a pumpkin over 2 weeks. Saying that he stinks is saying 2 weeks ago he's an MVP candidate to he stinks now. It's just an overreaction. This Bengals defense, they aren't that great. The 49ers still have elite offensive pieces. We're starting him. There could be guys who'd start instead of Brock, but I'm not worried about him, and I'm a Niners fan. I have every reason to be after those last 2 weeks, but I have full confidence in the kid. And then Jawan Jennings, tricky decision. I feel like he was off everybody's radar, and last week on the head coach episode, we made the gigabrain call of him as a DFS guy. I think he led the team in targets on Monday. Third most yards.
I captained him in DFS, and I doubled my money on that card.
Right, baby.
Yeah, it's your call.
Dude's legit. I mean, he's never going to be your leading receiver. He's never going to go for 150 and like 3 touchdowns. But, when you need a clutch first down or a big play, Jawan's got your back.
Okay, next game, we have the Ravens at the Cardinals. Ravens with an implied team total of 26.5, one of the higher ones on the week this week, coming back with the Cardinals at 18 points at home. Ravens have been on fire lately. This very well may be in my picks this week. For the Ravens, you're starting Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. They're big 3. Zay Flowers has really had a nice breakout lately. You're probably pretty happy, man, if you have him on your fantasy roster. You're probably pretty excited from what you've seen. I always thought his player comparison in terms of style of play, not in terms of talent, not in terms of production, but in terms of style, he reminds me a lot of Antonio Brown. Just a huge fan of the guy. Your tricky decisions. Gus Edwards had his best game of the season last week, but Justice Hill has had some big games. It's what we've seen with the Ravens backfield the last 3 years. It's just this weird, messy split. You can guess who you want to produce. Probably in PPR, you're favoring Justice Hill. But even then, he's had a really rough few weeks. It does seem like Gus has taken over, but that's what it seemed like for years, and you never know who to start. One of them will have a good game this week. Good luck to you if you're trying to figure out who. For the Cardinals, me and Ted went back and forth a little bit about is Hollywood a tricky decision or a start. I think Hollywood's looked too good this year. I know they have Marlon Humphreys back. I know the Ravens have really been taking it to teams, right? But I do think Hollywood's looked good enough. It is a revenge game. The game script should be extremely favorable toward passing, so I do think he's a start. And then for a lot of the same reasons, Trey McBride's a tricky decision. Zach Ertz, I believe, they're debating if he's going on IR. They're not sure what's going on with him. He had a pretty solid injury come up. And Trey McBride is one that the regime drafted to be a full-time starting tight end. He's gotten good usage for the most part when he's out. When Ertz is out, he got, I believe, 6 or 7 targets last week after Ertz left. And then you're sitting the rest. You're sitting Dobbs. And everyone else, don't start anyone else. Mercado got more run than Ingram did last week. Ingram got more run the week before. In any case, I don't think you want to be rolling out a second or a third string running back against the Ravens in an extremely pass-heavy game script.
I guess my only thing on this one would be Zay Flowers has only gotten in the end zone once this year. I would count on some of that luck to turn around, and probably you'll see him get in the end zone a lot more. I think he's doing all the right things to me.
Tremendous player.
All right, next we got the Kansas City Chiefs going into Denver to play the Broncos. I'm sorry, I was distracted by that disgusting bony ghoul on my screen. It really just couldn't stop looking at it. Our starts for the Chiefs are the big 3, Patrick Mahomes, Dr. Pfizer, and Pacheco. And then Rashee Rice is made his way into the start club. And don't look now, but I think the Chiefs might have their wide receiver 1. Is he an alpha wide receiver 1? No. definitely not. But he's getting used enough at this point. So yeah, fire him up, especially in a plus matchup like this. We're sitting everybody else. Nobody else in the Chiefs' offense really matters. The wide receivers are just constantly in a little rotation there. It's like throw a dart at a board. It's like if you want to start MVS, go for it, but I wouldn't if I were you. And our STD is Taylor Swift. We don't know if she'll be in the building. Will she travel to Denver? I don't know. What shirt will she be wearing? Will Jackson Mahomes be in the box with Brittany Mahomes and Taylor Swift? How many times will they pan to her? We don't know, so we're going to call it a tricky decision. Get that freaking ghoul off my screen. It's not football. I don't want to look at it. Broncos. We're starting Javonte Williams. We're starting Cortland Sutton. Javonte had a nice week last week against the Packers. They can be run on, but he's looked better. And Cortland Sutton is becoming a startable, primary wide receiver for this team. It just is what it is right now. Out of him and Judy, if you asked me preseason, I definitely wanted Judy. But now I definitely want Cortland Sutton. And on that note, we're sitting Jerry Judy. Just an average guy, a jag, if you will. He just looks done on this team. We're just waiting for him to get traded at this point. I think that he's kind of quit on this team. I think he's kind of quit on the season, and he just doesn't care anymore, is my estimation of it. And then STD is Russ. Funny to have Russ and Taylor Swift as our STDs for this game. Those are two of my favorite people. But yeah, we think the Broncos will be down and have to throw the ball. That's just really what this is. Russ is still not a great quarterback. I believe against the Chiefs last time he threw for 100 yards. So beware. I would only do it if you're desperate. But you never know what you can get with him. You have anything on this game, Yanni?
I think Russ had 14, 15 points last time they played. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but he's not like a garbage start. You just don't want to start him. Just about the Taylor Swift thing. I think she's an attractive woman, and she's a very, an incredibly successful person. I think I've said this before when we talked about it the first time. I had no idea. She just wasn't in my world. So I had no idea who this person was until she started getting, not no idea, but I had no idea that she was a fucking star like this until she came in the NFL. I really, I was unaware of her music or whatever. So I think she's a perfectly successful and attractive person. I just don't care about, and I hope her fans have a great time following her around the country. I just don't give a shit about her in football, and I don't know why I'm sad. There's Bleacher Report updates on Taylor Swift. It's getting way out of hand. And just out of curiosity, would you a night of festivities? Would you go with Sierra or Taylor Swift?
I don't even know what Sierra looks like. But Taylor Swift is getting to. She's getting to the. It's like Brittany Mahomes. I remember when she first came on the scene, her and Jackson, and everybody hated them. And then there was. If you're a Warriors hater like me, there was the period where they won the championship, I think, or were in the playoffs or something, and Steph brought Riley Curry up on the stage or whatever, and she was just acting like a out of control child. And it's like that weird sort of I'm not here for this, but it is being force fed down my throat. It just really is very annoying to me. I don't know. I mean, get this disgusting creature off my screen. Let's go to the next one.
I'll never understand why servicing a gentleman who is a successful gentleman makes you famous. That's an amazing privilege that women have, that if you are, banging a successful dude, you can actually get notoriety from that. And Taylor, that's not the case with Taylor, but Brittany Mahomes is to see her doing a secret handshake with Taylor Swift is wild. But that's enough. We're doing it too. Now we're covering it.
Have you seen The Quarterback on Netflix?
No.
Actually made me not hate Brittany Mahomes so much. It's worth a watch.
Check it out. I don't like that NFL. I've never watched Hard Knocks or anything. I don't know why. My little brother watched the Kelsey documentary, and when he told me that Jason Kelsey can't bend over to pick up his 4 and 5 year old kids, he's so messed up from playing center. I was like, oh my God, dude, that kills me. Now that's all I think about when I see him. Anyway, back to more brain damage and lifelong joint damage. Bears at Chargers. Bears with a 19-point implied total. Chargers with a 27.5-point implied total. Bagent, man. Bagent's showing signs of life. The only rookie quarterback this season to win his first game. The only one. Really, I thought he played heroically for just being thrown into these situations the last 2 weeks. But anyway, you're starting Foreman. Foreman does this weird thing where he comes in when the other guys in front of him are injured and he balls out. He has now done it across several franchises and several different opportunities. He had 33 points in half PPR last week. I think there was this window. Me and Ted were talking about this because it's kind of been we get these players going between us that we'll bat around over the months, really, and some of them for years. We've had a Debo conversation going for years now. It's part of the fun of sports. But one of the guys that I developed a man crush on in pre-draft was Roschon Johnson, and I grabbed him in a bunch of leagues. He was my most drafted running back this year. And it felt like there was this window for him to get the starting job, and he got concussed. And frankly, as Ted was pointing out before the show, Foreman's showing why he should have never been a healthy scratch. Him being a healthy scratch was outrageous. The guy's too productive, unfortunately, for Roschon. Sometimes we want these really good stories to come through in fantasy. And one of them certainly was a round 15 running back takes over the starting job. And that was in the cards, but we missed it, boys. So it's Foreman's job, I think, while Herbert's out. We'll see what the mix looks like when they come back. They did choose Roschon over Foreman once before, but I don't know how, having seen what you saw this week, you would give the job to Roschon and relegate Foreman to a backup. That doesn't seem logical to me. The DJ Moore, you are starting him. Even with Bagent, he was pretty productive last week. I think he had around 11 half PPR points. And Bagent looked good enough that you are starting him. And this is a very soft defense. An extremely soft defense, and it should be a very pass-happy game script. For all those reasons, roll out Foreman, roll out Moore. You're sitting Mooney and Kmet. Mooney is just sort of on here because some people have him rostered. Don't start him. Kmet has dropped off with the injury of Justin Fields. Roschon Johnson will be a tricky decision if he goes. Probably someone that I'll take a look at on some DFS rosters if I want to go stud wide receivers and throw in some high upside, cheap running backs. He's someone I'll take a look at this week. But I think you need to see the split. And I don't see, unless they really are tanking their season to try to get a high draft pick, I don't see how you would bench Foreman for Roschon at this point. And then Bagent, if you're a psycho, man, if you're a weirdo, if you want a really cheap DFS play, actually, again, this is someone I'm interested in DFS. It would probably be like a $4,800 quarterback, $5,200 quarterback. He adds a little bit of rushing upside. He has looked pretty good in the 6 quarters he played, and he is the first rookie quarterback this year to win his first game. So,
and going up against a Brandon Staley defense too.
And going against a Brandon Staley defense, that is, never underestimate the degree to which that defensive head coach can absolutely destroy his team's defensive productivity. It is impressive. Is Brandon Staley the destroyer of hope, like how Jimmy Garoppolo sucks franchises out? Does Brandon Staley just take hope from a team?
Probably.
He was the Rams. Well, he was the Rams defensive coordinator, I believe, until the year before they won the Super Bowl.
Oh,
I think that was how that went. And then when they got rid of him, they got Stafford and went to the Super Bowl.
Oh,
so a little bit of a correlation. I think. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure.
It's just a giant coincidence. There's no way that could be related.
Something interesting to keep track of. Man, that guy is atrocious. Dude, that we've been talking about it this week, but might as well throw it into this commentary here. The discussion around Justin Herbert, that he is like a fancy Kirk Cousins, or that he is the losingest quarterback in the fourth quarters, or that no quarterback has lost more since he started in the NFL. And there are so many environmental factors that go into that, one of which is playing with Patrick Mahomes in his division. But that is a Brandon Staley stat. That is not a Justin Herbert stat. And if you shared that on social media this week, if you're part of that crowd that that kid is a tremendous player. He is stuck with a garbage head coach. That being said, you're starting Justin Herbert. You're starting Keenan Allen. You're starting Palmer and Eckler. Justin Herbert's been a great fantasy asset this year, man. Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator, who I think is their likely next head coach, he calls pass plays at one of the highest rates in the NFL, and he calls plays in general at one of the highest rates in the NFL. And Kellen Moore and Keenan Allen have certainly benefited from it. Palmer should have had several touchdowns, if not for penalties, this last go around. And he's really looking like he's coming into his own, getting a lot of play time. It looks like Johnson, the rookie they took, is the busted draft pick. 4 rookie receivers back to back to back. It was JSN, Johnson, Addison, and do you remember the last rookie in that? Was it Tank Dell? I don't think so. Anyway, there's one more rookie taken all back-to-back within 4 picks, and it looks like, unfortunately, Quentin Johnson was the bust in there, at least so far. And then Eckler, you are starting. This is a garbage defense. I know he's looked rough coming off of his high ankle. I know he's on people's sell lists. Running backs, high ankles can tank their season in the middle of the season. Some running backs say it took 2 to 4 months to feel natural on it after the year ended when they got one in the midseason. Saquon had a season totally derailed by a high ankle. It's possible. We need to keep an eye on it. It makes it so you can't cut laterally. But I would expect against the Bears for him to have a good game. And if he continues to split work with Josh Kelly like he did last week, maybe there is a little bit of concern that that's a lingering injury. That may be something to monitor going forward. But for now, he is a start. No sits. Your tricky decisions are Donald Parham and Josh Kelly. Josh Kelly busted out a big run last week. He didn't even vulture a touchdown. He had a pretty good chunk play. I've trashed him multiple times this year because when he got the full starting run, he did not look good. I actually cut him from a roster before Eckler was healthy. So he might be one of those guys that maybe it's more that when he comes in spells, he can be really impactful. But if you give him the full run, for whatever reason. But he's a tricky decision, man. This is the Bears. Eckler has not looked 100%. On DraftKings, I would imagine he's going to be like $2,800 or $3,300 this week. It's an extremely cheap play if you want to throw a dart with a real upside there. And if they get a big lead on the Bears and Eckler's injured, why would they keep pounding Eckler? It makes all the sense in the world for them to give Kelly a lot of run in this game. So he is a tricky decision. And Parham, you know the deal with him. If you start him, you're hoping he catches a touchdown and falls in the end zone, and very good chance he does here. Very good chance. I mean, there's a realistic possibility, especially with the state of the Chargers and where they're at in their season and what's going on. There's a very real possibility they come in here and drop 40 or 45 on the Bears. They have to be frustrated. They've had a couple really bad breaks this year. They've taken a couple beatings. Their season does feel like it's at least, I don't know, their head coach feels like his head coaching career is in peril. It feels like Justin Herbert's reputation's in peril. It feels like their season's teetering on the edge of whatever. They've been firmly slid down in the power rankings in the AFC. So it feels like there's a lot at stake, and I would expect a big game out of them. If the Jaguars played the Chargers this week, who would you take, Ted? Who would you bet on?
Jags by like 20.
What?
Jags by 20.
Jags by. If they played the Ravens this week, who would you bet on?
Ravens by 50.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like, so all of a sudden they're in this spot where they came in maybe feeling like a potential, divisional game team, maybe a championship team if things fell right? And then all of a sudden now they're firmly at best at 4, 5, 6 in the power rankings at best. But even then, that's like, what if they played the Browns with Deshaun? What if the whole roster was healthy and they played the Browns round 1 in the playoffs?
Give me the Browns. Give me the Browns. This Chargers team isn't going to beat anybody right now.
Chargers at home against the Browns?
Yeah, I'll take the Browns. I'll take the Browns.
So there you go, right? Very, very bearish environment for the Chargers.
Yeah. This is a must-win game for them, and if the Bears somehow win this game, Brandon Staley's gone. Like, he is coaching for his job. It's win or get fired for him here. There's no excuses. There is no way he survives if the Chargers don't win this game. So I expect a big performance here from the offense.
So a fun fact about the Spanos family, myself being Greek, I actually know people who are pretty good friends of them. I've actually been to a few events where they're there. I never talked to him. I didn't want to bother the guy. He always had like an entourage with him of hairy-handed, cigar-smoking old Greek men, smell like cigar noir. But he is, even in the Greek community, people know he is a shrewd businessman. And he's famous for being one of the cheapest owners in the NFL. And that's part of the reason people think they didn't get Daboll or Sean Payton is he just didn't want to pay the contract. So the only reason that Brandon Staley isn't fired now, I think, is because of his cheapness. And that may be the only thing that saves him till the end of the season. But if you could get Kellen Moore like a little impromptu half season to see how he is as a head coach here, I don't know I don't know why that decision hasn't already been made. What does he think is going to turn around with the team right now? There's no fucking way, right?
I think they don't want to fire him if they think they have a shot at the playoffs. So like right now, like they're looking tough, but like I think there is still some thought in that building they could make it. So that's why I think he hasn't gone yet. If they lose to this Bears team, it's done. It's over. So that's why I think.
Here's an interesting question for you. If Bagent wins his second game, do they go with Bagent over Justin Fields?
No, they won't. Because they need to give Justin Fields.
They want to lose?
No, it's not that. It's that if they do have one of these top two picks, they're going to need Fields on the field, especially like hopefully with his best play at the end of the year, so they can try and flip him for something. So if they just roll with Bagent, they are psychos, just like the people, just like the managers. If you start Bagent this week, you'd be a psycho to just start him the rest of the year. You got to give it to Fields and hope he looks better and hopes you can flip him if you do get Caleb Williams. So I think might also be a bust, but that's a different hot take for a different episode.
Fair enough. Few talking points that are coming out in this game. It'll be really interesting. But if the Chargers don't beat, oh my God, yeah. All right. Good one.
Yeah, all right. This is the Monday night game.
Boy.
He's back. He's back, everybody. Handsome Jimmy and the Raiders are going to Detroit to play the Lions. The Raiders have an implied team total of 18.5 points. What was that?
The Silver Fox, Jimmy. He's getting that silver hair going. He's got a George Clooney thing going now.
Jimmy and his fat Italian hog have an implied team total of 18.5 points. The Lions have an implied team total of 27 points. For the Raiders, our only locked and loaded start on this roster that features Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams is Jacoby Myers. The man runs such a crisp slant route. It's so great. Like nobody gets kind of open 7 yards down the field in the middle, right where Jimmy can see him and throw the ball. So Jacoby Myers is our start of the week. Dude's a stud. If you drafted Jacoby Myers or you picked him up off of waivers, you got to be just stoked. We're sitting Jimmy and we're sitting everybody else on the team. Jimmy is the destroyer of worlds. This Raiders franchise, this Raiders team is 3-4 right now. And I think that maybe some Raiders fans are thinking, even after getting blown out by the Bears last week, some Raiders fans might be thinking, we're 3-4. We're ahead of the Chargers in the division. Maybe if we can win a couple games, we could get the wild card. Just watch. Just watch. Jimmy will come and take your soul. Just give it up now. Just know it's not going to end well for you. And then a tricky decision, Josh Jacobs. I wanted to put him as a flat-out sit, but Yanni insisted he has to be at least a tricky decision. This Lions team, even though they got blown out by the Ravens last week, this is a top one run defense. I have no idea how Josh Jacobs will be able to find any success here. I would assume he's just a tricky decision because of his draft capital and where you took him. Who else are you going to start over him? Roshan? And then Devontae Adams, he has been a squeaky wheel for the past month, and Jimmy doesn't care. Jimmy's skill set is incapable of getting Devontae Adams involved. It's sad for him, but at the end of the day, I believe John Middlecoff and Michael Lombardi said this. That's what you get for wanting to go to the Raiders. That's like if you had a nice, cushy job at Apple, and then Radio Shack calls you and says, "Hey, we'll pay you millions of dollars to come work for us," and you take the job at Radio Shack. This is just what it is. Hopefully, he gets out of there. I think he's a good player. He's not a bad player, but stuck in a bad spot. For the Lions, we're starting Gibbs, we're starting Amon-Ra, we're starting Laporta, and we're starting Jared Goff. No David Montgomery, and Gibbs was the only decent fantasy asset last week, I'd say, other than maybe Amon-Ra. So we're loading them up here. This Raiders team, they do not have a good defense. Amon-Ra, same thing. He's just a target monster. Laporta Potty, start him. He's the top 3 tight ends this year. If you drafted him at the end of drafts, you've got to be ecstatic. And Jared Goff. I know I've mentioned this the last 2 weeks. So I'll go ahead and mention it again. Entirely different player in inclement weather games, outdoors. This one's going to be in Ford Field in a dome against a not great defense. If there's a spot you fire him up, this is it. Sit is Jameson Williams. Dude is looking like a bust. He has a bad attitude. He just doesn't look that good at football. He's fast, but he's not getting any targets. He's working behind Josh Reynolds in the wide receiver rotation. No, thank you. And then on that note, tricky decision, Josh Reynolds, since Jameson Williams is in the doghouse on MCDC shit list, whatever you want to call it. Reynolds is going to be working as the 2 in a game that projects to be good for Goff and the Lions offense. So tricky decision on him. Do you have anything on this one? And our handsome friend, Jimmy?
No, I mean with the Devontae, obviously we're being a little tongue in cheek with Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. I mean, very rarely do you have a roster where you'd actually sit them. And Devontae Adams has had like a 37-point game with Jimmy. But the fact remains that every game where him and Myers have played, he has been outscored by Myers. And it's just hard to say, but at this point, it feels like with Myers and Jimmy in, you're looking at like a low-end wide receiver too. If you're, he's had like 8-9 points a lot of these games, 10 points. And Devontae's floor used to be with Aaron like 13 to 15 was like that. I mean, that was like down weeks. Yeah, sometimes you get what you get, stupid. You got paid. You got out of Green Bay. Good job, man. Then again, though, would he really be producing with Jordan Love on it? So,
just for the record, I was not tongue in cheek at all about Josh Jacobs. I want no part of him. Like, I would do many things to not start him. This is a terrible spot for him. And quite frankly, like, out of the two of them, like, Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams have both been disappointing this year. I at least have a little bit of faith that maybe Devontae can start to turn it around a little bit because he is still elite. Josh Jacobs, just, I don't know what happened to him. Like, the Monstars came and took his powers or something. Maybe Jimmy is like just one of those little aliens from Space Jam, like, and he just sucked up all of Josh Jacobs' power to like maybe.
He has he has a little football, a little Jimmy football that he carries around that glows.
Yeah,
and he walked by Josh in the locker room and rubbed it against him real quick. That was it. Yeah, with Devontae, he had so much talent that the ball could only take like 3/4 of it. Yeah, dude, when I saw Jimmy throw and get Devontae knocked out, I think against the Chargers, there was one team where he threw the ball over the middle and Devontae got lit up, dude. It was a hospital ball. And he was sitting there with his hands on his knees and he flopped his hands down like a little kid that got a shitty Christmas present. I was like, oh no, it is over. I don't know.
All right, that's gonna do it for us. If we sit here, we'll just talk about Jimmy for another 45 minutes. If you made it through the whole, this was an especially rambly one, but we have fun with these. And since we didn't give you front office because we were grieving our 49ers, we figured we'd give you a bonus episode chock full of bullshit. So if you made it through, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. And question for the audience, Yanni, do you have one?
Ciara or Taylor Swift?
Ciara or Taylor Swift in the comments. Let us know. All right, we'll catch you on Saturday for the gambling episode.